Hi, Audrey.
Hey, we are live. We're live. This is Mahabali, co-director of Virtually Connecting, coming to you from Cairo, Egypt. And we are reconnecting with the Digital Pedagogy Lab Institute, and we have on-site guests Audrey Waters, Martha Burtis, Tim Owens, and Jesse Stommel. So this is going to be really juicy. and we are doing this as a fishbowl as part of a session on Virtually Connecting that's happening on site. And so people on site are watching to see how a Virtually Connecting session happens in practice. Usually we have more time to chat with everybody before we go live. In this case, we just had a workshop, so we didn't have time to do that, but we're now live, and I'm going to ask everyone on site to introduce themselves, Autumn, and then everyone virtually to introduce themselves, and then we can start talking.
I'm just going to sneak in here. Hi, I'm Autumn Keynes, the on-site buddy, and I'm excited to be here. I'm going to turn it over to these guys.
I'm Jesse Stommel. Hi.
I'm Audrey Waters. Hello. I'm Martha Burtis. Hi.
And I'm Tim Owens. Hello.
We coordinated that.
Okay, and for virtual folks, Brittany, could you start introducing yourself, and I'll write the order for everybody else to introduce themselves. Just very quickly, your name and where you are.
Hi, I'm Brittany Brown O'Donnell. I think you guys can see me. I'm on my phone. Was supposed to help co-host, but I'm having some technology difficulties. My AC adapter broke. So I'm just down the road at Virginia Tech, and happy to be virtually participating just a few hours away.
George, go next. I've written in the tech the order.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I'm George Station. I am at Cal State Monterey Bay. I'm actually in the next town over right now at home in Pacific Grove. And it's 3 o'clock. Or no, it's 2 o'clock. Sorry.
Ken Bauer, computer science professor here in Guadalajara, and hi.
Sherry, you need to unmute.
Okay. Here we go. Thanks. Okay. Hi, it's Sherry. I'm in Vienna, Austria, and it is 11 o'clock. So.
Terry?
My name's Terry Elliott, and I'm an instructor at Western Kentucky University, and I live in the hills and hollers of Cave Country in South Central Kentucky.
That's really cool. Hi everyone, I'm Willy. I'm from Stellenbosch University in South Africa, and it is 11 o'clock.
I did not know that was how you pronounce your name, and you didn't correct me yesterday. So this is the Dutch pronunciation for Willem or something?
Oh, close enough, yeah. It's Afrikaans, but Dutch is close enough.
Okay. So can I just ask the first question to the on-site folks? I know Audrey is leading a track, and Martha is co-keynoting with Sean tomorrow, and Tim is dropping by, right? Yeah. So I just wanted to hear from, I want to hear from each of you, including Jesse, like how the event has been so far, and what is a key moment for you in the event so far?
The key moment for me was earlier today when I was telling Kathy Davidson that Kathy, Howard Reingold, and Audrey Waters were in the DNA of the project, and I was babbling on for about 20 minutes, and sure enough, Audrey Waters was sitting right on the other side of the wall, and I thanked, like, my lucky stars that I hadn't said what I really think.
How about you?
But Jesse, this reminds me of that moment in Cairo when I was talking to Bonnie, and you're like, "What are you guys talking about?" And I'm like, "You're saying bad things about you," and for a moment you're like, "Huh?" You know?
The key moment was almost when I killed Jesse just a few seconds ago. No, I mean, for me, the key moment was getting to hear Tressy's keynote yesterday. Hear Tressy's keynote, experience Tressy's keynote, have Tressy come to my session, and get to check in with her because I haven't seen her since October. I haven't seen Tressie since October. So yeah.
Right. I just noticed Paul Prinsloo in the background. Hi, Paul. We got a workshop together on Thursday. But yeah, Paul is such a good conference organizer. He got Audrey, Tressie, my boss, and Joyce Seitzinger. That was an amazing conference. So Martha, what was a key moment for you? Have you been at the event all day, or?
The keynote moment for me is going to be when Audrey Waters gives me the friendship bracelet that she is weaving for me at this moment out of pipe cleaners. And I am going to treasure it forever. Martha, will you be my friend? I can't say anything after that.
You just witnessed that key moment.
This moment needs an Alan Levine because Alan is the kind of person who does that kind of thing on Hangouts. So I can tell that Martha and Alan get along really, really well. That's the kind of thing you need. And Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I've just been stopping by. So I got here today, and I just popped out over from the Domain of One's Own workshop, which was great. But I think the key moment for me was actually Sunday night. I got to hang out with some folks as they were getting in and going out to dinner, and I stopped by there. And that's just fun because you see that, you know, there were a lot of folks that were sort of nervous coming together and not really knowing each other, you know, and, you know, some familiar faces, some that have only met online, as that classic moment where everyone's like, are you so-and-so online? Oh, yeah, I am too. And then other people who don't spend as much time on Twitter, they're just getting to know each other. But you could see like instant camaraderie with people. You could see, you know, that it was going to, they were looking forward to a really amazing week. And I can already, even in day 2, see that that's happening, that, you know, friendships are building between folks and colleagues and, you know, those relationships forming, which is just fun.
Sounds beautiful. And I think even virtually we can sort of sense that that was happening. And I really like that opening activity with the Legos. I want to give virtual folks a chance to ask questions, but since they haven't, there's a lot of people watching this Hangout, by the way. Yeah, somebody tell me what that was. Like, did you just ask someone to make a Lego character out of someone else, or did you like ask them to talk to each other first? Or yes, I can see it. It's very pretty.
No, the opening
He's wearing a tie, and I've never seen you wearing a tie.
But he is in a zombie apocalypse. If you look really carefully, he has his suit is in tatters. So essentially what we asked people to do was to chat with someone nearby them, ideally someone that they hadn't talked to before, didn't know too much about, share things about themselves, and then they had a box of Legos that they could choose from to build an avatar for the other person. And I really think that the key was the kind of co-construction of someone else's avatar, because we think of these as really sort of moments that we, like when we determine who we are and what our avatar is going to be, as moments of very personal moments. And so I think it had the effect of having people create a lot of connections.
Hi guys, I have a question. That was really I woke up with it this morning after Tressie's talk, and I was thinking about institutions and money. And I guess my question is, I kind of thought, well, what do I know about hybrid pedagogy? I thought, how you're in an institution. I mean, this group is sort of embedded in an institution, but I'm really trying to wrap my head around how do you function? I mean, where does the money come from? How do you sustain it? How do you sustain yourselves? I realize you're not all in one place, but that's something that was kind of turning in my mind after Tressie's talk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to speak for hybrid pedagogy, we're not really embedded within an institution, okay. And we've chosen not to be embedded within an institution from the very start of the project. And it was a discussion that we had at various different points. Different members of the board, different members of the group were working at institutions, but we really felt like the project could do more good if it wasn't attached to any institution or the interests of any institution. And it isn't to say that all institutions are bad, but the kind of work we wanted to do would happen better outside of institutions. And ultimately, we became a 501c3 nonprofit. So Hybrid Pedagogy, Inc. is its own institution, a very, very, very small one. And as far as budget goes, I mean, ultimately, the project was started out of my own pocket, basically just scraping together money to pay for web hosting and to pay for various different travel associated with it. And then slowly...
Wait, Tim doesn't give you free hosting?
No.
You don't I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm sorry. I'm joking. It's such a serious conversation. I'm sorry. Keep going. I'm sorry.
On Reclaim, but hey, Tim, do you want to give us free hosting? That's
why the site takes a while to load.
But actually, Reclaim Hosting gave 1 year of hosting to everyone who's attending there, right?
Yes, indeed.
So,
and honestly, that's the way that you survive as a very, very small, non-institutional organization. I mean, really, the group of people that you're seeing in front of you are people who have both worked inside of institutions, some of us, and have also been really good at building connections that bridge different institutions. And I think it really depends upon people caring for one another. And truthfully, the connection, you know, asking Tim the other day if Reclaim would be willing to give free hosting to our attendees was less about getting free stuff for our attendees and much more about the potential connections that we saw could be made through those websites that they might build, but also between us and Reclaim.
In fact, I think a testament to that was I was talking to Audrey just a little bit ago, and she said, yeah, we were in my track and I mentioned it, but at least half the room probably already had accounts, and that just speaks to you know, that connection there with people that they've already known about it. It's not so much about this traditional sponsorship in terms of that, but more about just making stuff available, being embedded in a community, and having that community feed right back into, you know, what we're trying to do.
And I don't know, I think of it from the perspective, and maybe you can speak to this, but I think of, like, good marketing is building relationships. It's not about peddling your wares. And I even think about, like, Audrey Waters' work. Like, her work is successful not because she peddles it extraordinarily well, but it's more, well, she does do that extraordinarily well, but it's more because she builds relationships and makes connections.
Can I owe you stickers? I haven't put them in the mail yet, but they're coming.
That's cool, Audrey. So I was going to have a question. It's actually an international group here. It's pretty amazing. And I tend to jump in these groups, and it's a very U.S.-centric group, and I'm the weird Canadian in Mexico. How do we help in that sense in this group, extending it more internationally, besides what's happening right here? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're mulling. It's a hard
My sound
question.
sucked earlier.
No, for me, it's, I think that the global the global piece is really important, and I was thrilled actually when Paul applied to be the fellow in my track. Partially because having these conversations, as you said, having these conversations about the future of education tend to be very U.S. focused, as though higher education sort of begins and ends on this sort of geographic outline of the U.S. And so having different perspectives, bringing different perspectives to the table, talking about different models of change, different struggles that people are facing, it's really only a very partial picture and a very blindered picture when it's centered on a particular U.S. story. And often within the U.S., a particular, perhaps, Ivy.
True. So, I mean, Paul, hi Paul again. So Paul and Kate Bowles from Australia and I are giving a workshop on Thursday at 4 p.m. about just that, inclusive globally networked learning. And a lot of the virtual participants are people like Sherry, who are Americans abroad or who are living in America but they're not American. And we have a big group of those, like I targeted particular people for that workshop to be our virtual participants. And then hopefully that'll be just one. And the thing is that Jesse actually said, Maha, we want an international workshop. And he didn't tell me what to do with it. He said something international. And I said, okay, I'll get Paul and Kate and we'll see what we do with that. But it's that, I think, intentionality. It's this recognizing that if you don't do it intentionally, it's not going to happen on its own, because that's just the way it is. Ed tech in general is very US-centric. Not even Europe and Australia. I'm not even talking about where I am in the world. It's just very US-centric, and it's making those intentional decisions and not just recognizing it and being quiet, but taking steps towards that.
Yeah, exactly. It can't just be a vague desire or a hope that you're going to make this more diverse. You actually have to take really specific actions towards that.
I made the guy that I work with move to Italy, and that's worked out really well.
I think we can all agree.
Well, I can certainly agree.
It's easier to work with Jim at a distance. Is that the point here?
He's evangelizing. He's evangelizing.
That's right.
Yes.
That's a name of a book. That's a book name. Evangelizing Eastward.
I had a question about tools, and some tools that I've been thinking a lot about lately. Wikidata and smallest federated wikis. And I just wonder about the future of these tools and bringing a more evenly distributed global learning institution. We're talking about global learning institutions. Do you think these kinds of tools can help us do that?
I honestly, my initial answer is that I don't think tools can successfully do the thing that you're asking. I think that I'm not sure what the tool's role is, but there's a different set of behaviors and actions that actually achieve what you're describing. I think the tools end up being maybe something that can facilitate a change in thinking or a change in how we interact with one another.
Yeah, and I mean, I think about the early days of UNW blogs, and now WordPress is the very popular thing, and back in 2007, not so much, right? But there was still this community of folks sharing the work with each other, especially WordPress in education, and multi-site was very, multi-user at the time it was called, and so there was a lot of this open sharing happening just around what plugins are you running, what kind of things are you doing. It wasn't so much about the tool as it was about that connection to a broader community around something. And so it was well, how are you accomplishing it? How are we accomplishing it? And the ways in which we do that. So whether it's Wikidata now or something else.
Just the web.
Right, exactly.
I take a slightly different take on that, and the reason is that I think sometimes, and I would prefer not to use the word tool. I would just use the more general word of technology. But I think sometimes we believe that we have to always value something above the technology, and sometimes I actually think that technology points us to places and shows us things we didn't see before. And that's kind of a vague answer, and I'm not speaking specifically to Wikidata, but what it reminds me of is the question that we often get in EdTech, or that Jesse knows, this is one of my pet peeves, but the thing that often comes up in EdTech where to make people feel good will say, it's not about the technology, it's about the teaching. Which sounds really great, except that sometimes the technology reveals something to you about the teaching or about the people or about the community that you couldn't see before. So I don't believe in that dichotomy in the same way. So I think my answer to you would be that, yes, I think sometimes tools in and of themselves can take us to places that we didn't know we could go, and sometimes not. But I don't think it's always just about people and community and collaboration. Way.
I guess my point was that I think of both those tools as first as an ethos before they are a tool.
Yep.
And that's what is so powerful about those particular instruments.
Yeah. I don't know. There's also, this is maybe to agree with Martha. I remember the first time I was in a Google document, and I was in a Google document with Sean, and we were co-writing something. And to just watch the flashing of cursors and see what his, and I don't want to sort of put Google on a pedestal or Google Docs on a pedestal. That was just happened to be the first time that I experienced that kind of synchronous live action collaboration where my cursor, my words were inside of his words. And that was something really powerful for me. And it achieved something that Sean and I had been working together for 12 years at that point and had never co-authored something. And since then, we have co-authored probably 40 articles and book chapters.
We are at the 5-minute mark, so I just want to make that little announcement. So this is probably like the wrap-up time.
So George has had a question for a while, and then maybe if folks on site need to go, we can wrap up. But George.
Okay, thanks. Kind of more globally here, with what Jesse said earlier about existing outside traditional institutions, not to the point where you're necessarily becoming an institution to be subverted, but since you're kind of at that stage of being subversive or challenging and so on, or just plain connectivist maybe, right, that doesn't sit well within an institution. I wonder if you could think about or comment on the way Tressie, I think, approached the same thing in her keynote, or the similar concept. I'm going to keep her term the Information Underground Railroad, where she listed a bunch of things, freedom schools, black colleges, faith communities, civil rights movement, et cetera, right? There was a slide with stuff on it that were not traditional institutions. And I wonder if you could comment on how what you're doing can have something in common with what she described as kind of the Underground Railroad of how do we make learning happen in the face of all these other challenges. And I don't know if you need to talk about how you can do that without appropriating Tressie's concept, if you will, and making that an issue. I feel comfortable in doing it. I'm already black, and she was listing things, you know, that were related, so I'll just go there with it. But digital pedagogy in its drive to be diverse, which is totally working, by the way, from where I'm sitting. How do you honor what Tressie was getting at, and then honor what you're also going after with your decentralized approach?
Yeah, I don't think that I can possibly steal that concept from her, because that was a really, really kind of moving moment in her keynote for me. The other thing that was really powerful about her keynote was the way that she somehow managed to both be hypercritical of her institution and also a spokesperson for her institution, and was able to do those things with such grace at the same time. I really admired that. And I would say essentially the same thing about the institution that I'm at now, which is that this institution has, more than any institution that I've been at, in even just the 10 months that I've been here, supported me more than I've ever been supported, but also kind of let me go run wild more than I've ever run wild. Do other people have thoughts about the question?
So Vili has a question. Do you guys have time, or do you guys have to run? I don't want to keep you if you have to run, but he has a really urgent question.
Only if it's cool with everyone. Audrey, I was wondering, I've looked at some of the work that you've done before, and I'm very interested in what you have to say about pre-service teacher training. And I was especially wondering, how do we do that teaching pre-service teachers in higher education before they go back into school about digital pedagogy? Do we go beyond just modeling and hoping it catches on? What's being done?
I mean, I think that this is particularly the challenge, and I hear a lot of people say, well, eventually we're going to have students who grew up with technologies become teachers, and somehow magically that's going to fix it. But I think we're now like at least a generation beyond people who grew up with technology, and we actually haven't begun to address these, because I don't think we've been deliberate in doing so, and I don't think we've actually sort of unpacked some of the ways in which the digital might alter greatly pedagogy, right? So what happens often, I think, is we have traditional classes of pre-service teacher training, and then the digital is like an extra unit at the end, right? So it's not actually transformational. We're doing the same thing, but now we're just doing it in a learning management system, right? We're doing the same thing that we've long done, but instead of assigning worksheets, students submit their stuff via Google Forms, right? And so I think that we have to actually really think about the ways in which this is transformational, and I'm not sure that there are very many examples of that. And because I think for us, I think motivated by progressive education, those don't always go together, right? So how are we doing transformative work that is progressive education, that is grounded in those values, as opposed to just, again, teaching teachers to be in control of a classroom. Modeling something different, I think, is very rare. I think another kind of extension of this that I find really troubling too is that we have a tendency in higher education to think very narrowly about who our students are and where they come from. And it's like we talk about K-12 and we talk about higher education, and we so rarely acknowledge the fact that those are actually the same students, right? Like, the students who come to college went through K-12, and then some of them also become pre-service teachers who go back and teach in K-12. And for me, one of the biggest barriers I would like to see come down in these conversations is that one between higher education educators and K-12 educators, because we are educating the same people. And I would love to see, for example, like having Jen here this week, having more K-12 presence in events like this, and then figuring out what that means also in terms of training your teaching here at universities.
Awesome. Thank you very much for giving us that extra minute.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for everything. And I'm going to go offline right now. Either if the on-site folks need to leave, they can leave, and maybe the rest of us can have a short conversation afterwards, so that we're not keeping them. But if we want to keep talking, we could do that. Does that sound good? I'm not going to do what I did yesterday, which is close the Hangout by mistake. So, okay, great. So I'll let you know when we're not on the air anymore.